All right, this is just a quick vid for those who are interested in exporting character stuff out to Blender for rendering. One thing you need to keep in mind is the match goal orientation if you're utilizing it within your rigs, right? So I like to have match goal orientation on because it to me it aids in the animation fluidity of the animation process itself. And then I just turn it off. I just turn it off and then tweak everything before exporting out, right? Um, but let's see what happens. So this is with, let me see. This is with goal orientation on. Yeah, so goal orientation is on, okay? And we're just gonna look at it real quick. So we're just gonna walk through if you haven't seen the other vids, anyway, this is the step-by-step of exporting. I'm just gonna select my rig just because I always should be selecting the rig, or the main master there. Let's go out as FBX. Okay, and since this is the full model, not just the animation, this is the full model, I'm just going to go out with everything turned on, because this is the first time, right? And it's not just the animation. I want the whole entire model to go, model plus rig. Okay, now it's over, and so let me go over to there you go. See, it popped back because the FBX finished reading it. So that's where it was before. So let's go on over to Blender. Okay, and let's do we're getting ready to import it. But I want to say a thing about the Better FBX add-on, which is actually what prompted me to make this video. One was just to mention the match goal orientation, but two is I see that there are importing differences in the latest build of FBX, of the Better FBX, which I believe is 6.3.3 or something like that. So what, Brent, what are you using? I'm using, this is not like a secret or something. So I'm using 6.1.3. I noticed that with the latest version, it doesn't title it, because FBX, the Better FBX, gives titles to certain things that once it imports it. A key title that Blender needs to see is the name armature. It doesn't need to see it from Lightwave, but it needs to see it in the actual file for the NLA editor and the action editor aspect to work properly, right? And I saw that in the latest version of Better FBX, it actually wasn't doing that. And so this is the version that came out in July, I believe, June and July, which is what I've used every version up to this, and this was the last build that didn't do that problem. So I used 6.13, and it's everything, but all the other juiciness that's inside of it. So I'm just showing you which one I use that works successfully. And let's import. All right, so we have the model in. Right, now this is the full model, right? Nice and with the rig. Doesn't have a particular, well, actually this one does have a pose on it, so I'll just go ahead and put them on pose, right? I was going to say, do the whole spiel about, oh, it doesn't have anything on it and stuff like that. The reason why I say that is because it comes in, as you see here, it'll say like base stack 05, okay? Or it'll be like something related to base stack, okay? That's important to note because whenever you bring the file in, like with the model, it comes in like that. But when you import, as you'll see, when you import just the animation onto the rig, it actually gives that file name. So let's say, like you would just say, okay, I need to load the model in. So you load the model in. It comes in at base stack 05 or whichever one, but it doesn't matter to you, honestly, because it's just the model with the rig. If you have a default pose, like an idle or just a default pose or something like that, then you begin to load those on as separate animation files. You begin to attach them. They will load in with their actual name. You can rename this thing here, but I would just say just leave it alone. When you bring the idle in or bring the default pose in, just the animation itself, it'll say like default pose. Whatever you titled it in the file, that's the file name will show up here, right? Anyway, so you'll see it in this next one. But I'm just tweaking here, tweaking the, just tweaking. I'm just tweaking this little section here, right? So just to show. So we see here that the match goal orientation did not carry over, right? But I'm going to just leave it right there, and this is, and we're just going to go ahead and adjust it. But I just also want to show that, so this is the bone structure here is called armature, right? It fits under, so my genoma rig or the overall thing was called harb rig. And in there is going to say armature. This naming, all this naming stuff is what Better FBX is doing. It's not something you're going to see over in Lightwave, okay? As I said before, the latest version, which just came out like a month ago or 2 months ago, for some reason is not doing that, right? It throws things off. But the version that came out in July, which works, or around that period of time, which works perfect, does do the proper naming convention. So just want to let that be known, because I was almost pulling my hair out, thinking I'm like, oh, I'm updating my add-ons. Yeah, okay, that wasn't exactly successful. So I just have armature selected here, just so I know. Okay, fine. Let's go on back over to Lightwave, and I'm just gonna adjust these. Now, same thing. If you were doing like a walk or run or fight scene, whatever it is you were doing, you would animate all that, and then you would just tweak before you export out for FBX. You would just adjust the bone rotation for whenever they're planted in a specific way. You can also use the GL. What is that utility? This works really good too. Where is it at? The GL animation layers that I utilize. I like that a lot. That works out really well too, particularly when you're doing like a cross animation across a lot of frames or something. It basically creates an envelope. So let's go ahead and adjust this. So this real quick. So let's go into bone mode. Got to go from Blender to Lightwave Brain here. And I don't know why I have rotation there. The rotation is going to be on parent, okay? But let's first turn off match goal orientation, and you can see it's going to flip. And let's go to and turn off the bank controller, right? And do the same thing for the other one. Now, all depends. Now, this is only if you're using match goal orientation, and it depends on how your rig is set up. But okay, so the inverse is already turned off on this one. Let me turn off match goal orientation. Okay, and so I just call it cleanup phase. I'm using the wrong mouse. Okay, and then the rotation is just taking place on the parent parent axis. So Shift P and turn on bank, right? I'm just going to go to a front view, and so here we have that same positioning, right? And I'm just going to correct it. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other one too, and turn on his bank, right? And do that, because what will happen is you'll do all your animation, and then you may not notice it, but if you really zoom in on the feet, you'll see that, hey, they're not matching the bank properly. They're not matching the bank. You know, you'll notice it, and then you're like, man, what happened in the FBX? It's only because match goal orientation does not transfer into FBX. That's all. And now it's made a keyframe. And same thing. Once again, you can use an envelope for this and stuff, like whatever you want to do to create that proper positioning. But so once again, I'll just say it one more time that I'll do a let's say a clip. I'll do like a walk, and then I'll go and clean it, right? I'll fix the match goal orientation afterward, and then I'll take that clip and I'll duplicate it to create an overall walk cycle or whatever it is, knowing that the proper rotation or the rotation that's going to transfer over in FBX is set up properly. That's all. All right, so now let's go ahead and now let's export this over. Once again, I always like to just set my rig, because whenever I'm using the IK Boost motion loader thing, you always have to have the rig selected. So I always do this by default, just to, even though I'm not using that, I just do it by default. This is a good habit. And then let's go ahead and export. And same thing. Oh, and then let's rename this, so we can call it well, I'll just give it another. Well, it's gonna be file 33, so it's gonna be set up post 33. And let's go FBX. And I don't need to go out as all of this, but it doesn't matter because it's only going to read from the it's only going to read the animation for what we need. And because it is already set like that, once it finishes, it'll pop back to 0. Here it is. See, it's back to 0 again. That just tells me that it's finished. All right, and now let's go on over to Blender. Okay, so this is the same thing. If I'm this is so this is a correct. All I'm doing is correcting the feet, but it's the same exact process if you're loading in a walk animation or run animation or any other animation onto the existing rig, right? Kind of like it's a motion builder. I use motion builder a lot in the past, so it's like a motion builder-ish kind of mindset you got going on. So make sure you have armature selected, and then all we're going to do is go File, say Import, and voila, there you go. Okay, the footer now the proper file is in, or the animation is in, right? And I have a lot of this is my my Franken rigs, right? So they have a lot of external. Sometimes they have a lot of external parts that are left over that just keep on repeating. So unless I remove them, so I usually remove them. But either way, so let's select the armature, okay? And the main thing to note is yes, is on frame 10, is our foot planted properly? Yes. Is the animation that was there originally? Yes. Okay. We only changed frame 10, so we didn't change anything in between. So I got a little floaty guy, but we didn't change anything in between. All right, as far as that bank orientation. And you see here, it says Harb Rig Initial Setup Pose 33. So once again, if you name everything properly, like, this is, Harb, whatever it is, shot, blah, 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 or walk cycle, blah, 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 or jump cycle, da, da, da. If you name everything properly, then you're stacking right. And the base stack, so that's, that comes in at 005, right? I don't know why it's base stack 005. And then you had the base stack that was in here, right? So it was base stack 005, right? That was the original file. Just to keep keeping all this. These are just the other initial things that Blender generates as far as the NLA editor is concerned. But the main thing is knowing where you're starting from, because my NLA editor is not emptied out. There is a way you go up into the outline editor and you dump out these names, or else they're going to stack, right? And then when they stack, mine are stacked right now. They stack, and then so Blender will just pick up after the next one and stuff. So anyway, it's just like a little naming thing to or file orderly thing to be aware of. So that was base stack 005. It came in at 03, 005. All this other stuff is like the bone orientations and stuff. So that's the main thing. So if I had a run, I could just load the run in. I could load the climb in. I can just keep loading in, right? And then so you wind up having a nice library inside the NLA editor. And once again, you're not updating the model. It's only loading the animation onto the rig. Okay. Right. Which is actually, that's a nice little feature too in Lightwave for we're using for Motion Builder is being able to merge the FBX into the scene. Because that's basically what it does. It binds the FBX animation onto the rig inside of Lightwave. Same thing. And the same thing can be done. Last thing on that, this whole same thing can be done with Cascador going to Lightwave. The same exact thing as to take the Cascador animation and bind it to the animation into the rig inside of Lightwave. But there's only one little thing you got to turn on in the Cascador. But that's about it. Okay. Anyway, so hopefully that will help anybody going into the future who plans on utilizing Blender in their workflow. and not to pull their hair out when they when you say, hey, we can bring this into Blender, then all of a sudden the feet are cockeyed, kind of a thing. And you're like, oh man, and there's nothing you'll do in Lightwave will fix it outside of turning it off, and then you realize, oh, I have to turn it off after I do my animation and clean it up. All right, so that just gives everybody a heads up. All right, okay, thank you.